Welcome to Truman's Town Hall with your host, Matt Truman.
All right. Hey, everybody. We'll let a few people jump in and then we'll get started. With me to my left, but right on the screen, is Frank Wiley. And we're going to be bringing on Councilman Richard Shaw.
Yes, sir.
He's the Ward 1 city councilman. He's opted not to run again in this term. So, as they say, he is. What's the term they use? Lame duck. Is that derogatory, or that's just the term they use, right?
It is. I think it depends on how you want to take it. Because lame duck can mean nothing's actually going to happen, or lame duck means they really got nothing to lose. So
Right.
They're kind of just on their way out. They don't, So I think in this case, we're going to find out.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Richard Shaw. Mr. Shaw,
Hi, good evening.
Welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me. I feel like I should have like some sort of smoke and entrance music or something.
All right, so there's a lot of stuff going on in Huber Heights. You sit up there on the dais. You know all the intimate details that happens. The only thing I know is what folks talk about online and what I see from the meetings that we watch. Frank's with me. He watches meetings. A lot of the folks that are going to be watch meetings. Someone asked on Brick City Town Hall tonight, why Richard? Why are you going to have Richard on the podcast? Because he's been silent lately. And we talked about being a lame duck politician. I don't know if that's how you feel, but what are your thoughts going in? You have, roughly 10 months left in office. I'll say why I brought you on here is because
Okay.
I think a heck of a lot of what happens in and around the city. I think you have your ear to the grindstone. Do I think you've been silent lately from the time that, I don't know if Team Huber is a good or a bad thing nowadays up for you guys. You guys went out hard charging. You guys were up at City Hall looking through documents. And I mean, you guys were always going out, having meetings and doing stuff. And then it seems like lately, folks, myself included, that you guys have been a little silent lately. What's your thought on that? And where am I wrong if I am?
No, I appreciate the question, and like I told you earlier when you asked me to come on here, that nothing was off topic. Everything was free game, and we've not posed or went over any lines of questioning. You're right. As of late, I have been silent on the social media front. That doesn't mean I have been silent behind the scenes. Even though I have 10 months left, I still been working within the region. I still been working for this community, and I still been working for the good of the people. However, as of late, it's been more of a conversation of compromise to try to get certain things done, in my opinion, and really trying to see what in the next 10 months myself and many of my colleagues can agree on that we can get things done, and what items we don't agree on that we can either put on the back burner or we can have civil discussion on. You're right. Back in 2014, 2015, Team Huber, they were a hard charge, man. We were kicking down doors and things were happening. We also had a great support of residents and business owners behind us that was helping us get things done and move things in a forward in a positive direction. Over the years, that kind of seemed to dwindle off. Doesn't mean we stopped working as hard as we did behind the scenes. In my past 7 years, I think we've got a lot of great things done, even with the animosity, the back and forth, the debates, the heated exchanges. And I think there's still some good things to go. But as far as being on social media, you're right. Things have been kind of laxed, and I take full ownership of that. I think in part, and not to place any blame, but COVID really did destroy a lot of that. Matt, as you know, and Frank knows, in the past 7 years, I have had the most community interaction out of with any council member on the dais when it comes to community relations, town hall meetings, interaction with businesses, and really COVID put a stop on that. I tried to do some online forums. That really didn't work out as well. I was at some of those meetings. I had between 30 to 50 people plus at some of those meetings.
Right.
I mean, they were huge. More people would attend my town hall meetings than would attend a city council meeting in 6 months combined.
Right.
But I think COVID kind of put that back a little bit.
Let me ask you this: are you going to ramp any of that back up, or are you going to are you going to keep going the way it is now?
No, I appreciate it. So I've actually been in contact with a few businesses to find out, proper protocols in certain areas. Because as you know, some of the businesses that I was doing these town hall meetings at were healthcare facilities, large businesses, things of that nature. So that is something I'm going to continue to do. And here in the next 30 days, you should be seeing a town hall that will be presented.
Awesome. Okay, so let's get into some of the meat and potatoes of why we asked you to come on here today. My first question is this: Huber Heights has a council manager form of government. You and I both sat on the Charter Review Commission.
Yes.
And we remember back in the day with Tom McMasters. Council shut Tom McMasters down essentially because he was talking too much. So why do you guys let Mayor Gore bloviate the way he does on the dais? That's my opinion, but I've heard that opinion from a lot of people. I don't know if you agree with that opinion, but he does not have a vote unless it's a tie, yet he will try to talk and make compromises and spin and do what he does, sell the idea that him and his team want to have. So why does council allow that to happen when they wouldn't allow it with other mayors? I was just going to say, there are other folks who went against McMasters that are still on the dais today. So,
well, and fortunately, it looks like they're going to have to see him again in the future. But as far as Mayor Gore and his conversation on the dais, it's quite interesting for me because more times than not, he's sinking his own ship. He talks himself out of the issues and out of the problems. Somebody once told me that if somebody is talking a lot, they're trying to sell you the product. So, as far as I'm concerned, I don't mind when he talks. I think it's quite interesting. And I'll give you an example. At the last meeting, there was a large banter between him and Councilman Lyons. Mm-hmm. And by any stretch, it wasn't productive. It was entertaining, but it wasn't productive. I actually leaned over to the interim city manager and I said, hey, Mayor Gore does know he's running this meeting and can shut this down. He's one of the two parties involved in this conversation. And the interim city manager leaned back over and said, yeah, he does. So he's doing it to himself and the issues that he's trying to support. However, he also knows, the apathy within the community. There's not a whole lot of people watching. There's not a whole lot of people paying attention. So when you have that type of, situation going on as the mayor, you can run a meeting. You can talk all you want. And to be honest with you, on the last work session, I don't think we got a whole lot accomplished.
Right. I'd agree. Why do you think there's apathy in the community? I mean, you got 43,000 people in the city of Huber Heights, 4,000 voted in the last election. Where's everybody at?
Man, that's a great question. I will say the last election that I challenged for the at-large position, I did some things differently. I made some tactical errors. I also had a situation where I took a lot of promises that weren't kept by certain individuals within politics, and those things I'll never forget. But I also err on myself. I didn't do the door knocking. I didn't do as much as the face-to-face conversation that I did back in 2014 that won me the seat. As far as the apathy, I think people are really getting irritated with state and national politics, and I don't think that your Mr. and Mrs. John Q. taxpayer really knows how important local politics are. I mean,
Right.
we're gonna have a water infrastructure town hall meeting coming up, and I'm going to tell you right now, there's going to be empty seats in the room. Just because I in my opinion, the community, would rather go on social media and complain and make opinions rather than putting their name on a ballot, rather than going to City Hall, and that's tough. It really is.
I've saw a
So,
couple folks starting to come and speak out, so that's good. But
right.
more people need to speak out. That's all there is to it.
That's it.
And I think part of the reason why a lot of folks don't come and speak out is the deadpan response you get. And you can sit up there for your allotted 5 minutes, make some great points, ask some really pointed questions on some things that matter. And at the end of it all, you might get a, well, thanks for your comments or thanks for your opinion. So how do we improve that so that people feel like if I go to City Hall and I take the time and I get over my nerves and I stand up at that microphone and I'm on camera, it's going to be online, it's going to be preserved forever, and I take that vulnerable moment to speak my mind, that it's going to matter and actually go somewhere or accomplish anything.
Frank, that's a $22 million question. When you're constantly being dismissed by certain council members and a mayor, when you come up,
We'll
and
get
have
to that here in a little bit, by the way.
that's frustrating. But yeah, I can touch more on that later.
Sure. Okay, so I keep hearing this rumor, and it comes from all directions. I still have a foot inside Huber Heights, even though I don't, everybody knows Matt doesn't live in Huber Heights. Okay. But I still have a foot in there, and I still hear 50,000 residents. The mayor wants 50,000 residents. Is this a goal of council and the mayor, just the mayor, and why? And what about development? And I'm going to spur that in there as well. There's a lot of talk about development and 50,000 people. What do you say, Richard?
Man, if I honestly have to be blunt and honest, I think that's a pile of BS. Have I heard those rumors that we're trying to get to 50,000? Yeah. Do I believe that's a goal of the mayor and other council members to get to that 50,000 in order to get additional state funding, i.e. Kettering? Yeah, I do believe that's their goal. But at the same time, they have not been paying attention to our current infrastructure. In my opinion, they say they will. They say they have been, but proof's in the pudding. I mean, we just had a water presentation study on our water production and our infrastructure. I think, oh my goodness, you just take a search through Facebook and look at all the complaints on traffic. Just here today in my ward, we have additional water main breaks. And what I find interesting is those water main breaks that were supposed to be predicted by this new Burgess and Nyepel study. That was not a street that was predicted on there. So I find it funny that in the past 2 years, council's made a push to get additional water infrastructure, but we haven't put a single pipe in the ground. It's all been lip service. We talked about we're going to fix the traffic issues.
And if you watch some of those meetings, and I don't want to throw you out on the bus or under the bus here, But if you watch some of those meetings, the city engineer had said there was pipe in the ground and then mentioned, okay, well, we have pipe ordered or we have that, but none of that happened. So why would your city engineer say things that are just not true? Why is that happening?
That's a great question, because the city engineer, came back with this study. For example, the East Water Main Extension project that came in over $1 million over his initial estimate. He says that pipe can't be found, can't be ordered. I'll be debunking that here very soon. Councilman, Otto has had the same questions. Councilwoman Kitchens had the same questions.
They're both welcome on the podcast. I've asked them to come on. They're welcome here as well.
And I believe there's an internal struggle with some of the information that the city engineer has. Unfortunately, that's not a position that that council has directive over.
Right.
And that's unfortunate, because I feel like we have been sold a bad bill of goods recently by our city engineer. And I'll give you another example. This water lining project that we did a few years back.
Mm-hmm.
Holy mackerel, that was a pile of trash.
It was sold well, though.
What's that?
It was sold very well.
It was sold like it was going to fix the world's problems. And then if you go back to the last work session and listen to the gentleman, Kevin from Burgess and Nyepel, he literally stood there and said, yeah, we've never really had any success with that. And the AWWA doesn't believe that that's a sufficient way to fix the project. Well, if this guy knows it, how in the world did our city engineer not know that by doing his due diligence? And essentially, we wasted close to $1.5 million, if not more, going through that entire project. Which delayed us even more, because we were told that was going to be the end all to fix all.
Well, and that's another example where citizens spoke up and said that CIPP lining wasn't going to necessarily work the way they were anticipating. It wasn't really designed for city water mains. It was more designed for residential, like to the house, not to the main in the street. And they were talking about the risk of failures and possibility of breaking, and then what happens to the chemical component in that liner when it ruptures. Does it end up in the water supply? Can it get out of the water treatment plant? Is it all filtered out? And they were assured that everything was safe and fine, and that the city would never do anything like that would jeopardize anybody, as well as the fact that it was the best bang for the buck that was around. So how do we rectify that with people that live down on Hubbard, for example, that they had this lining go down their street and then ended up with a record number of breaks after that in their area?
No, again, the only course of action we have is to continue to call this out. Continue to call out these issues. This water study is, it's been exactly what myself and Mr. Otto have been, advising council of for years. That's why we went to these National League of City meetings. That's why we go to these conferences. We've been bringing back for years upon years talking about infrastructure, and we just had a lot of deaf ears on council, and now everybody's like, oh my goodness, now we have a study that we paid for, which really we didn't need a study because we knew what the problem was. And then they come back and say, well, we're, 20 million plus behind on water main replacement. But in the same breath, they say, oh, but your water main replacement program has been working out fine. You can't say both of those at the same time.
They sure did, though.
Yeah, he sure did, but it's ludicrous.
So when one of the main problems in that water main study was identified was the increase in the water pressure going north to support the new development, stress the pipes on the backside. Is there any discussion right now of possibly dialing that water pressure back a little bit to preserve and buy some time in the areas that can't handle that additional load to support the new pipes up north, especially when they're considering possibly another, 1,000 houses up that way? And if the East Main connects over there, they're talking more. That's going to further stress the system, and they're going to have to keep putting those lift stations in to push that pressure up. I mean, we're going to have water features all over the old end of town.
Oh yeah, no, beyond a shadow of a doubt, this is going to get worse, in my opinion, before it gets any better. Now, to that, I will say, when we did the boosting stations for north of 70, when we did the water softening program, we were told in our reports that there would be issues after that. There would be, moderate, main breaks and things of that nature. That came with that.
1 second, Richard.
Okay.
Because I listened to the gentleman from Burgess and Nyepel who gave the presentation about the water study. He didn't talk about water softening. He talked about water pressure and all the lift stations. Water softening was never mentioned by him. It was the water pressure.
It wasn't mentioned by him, but it was in the study.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think in his report, he
what was the major issue? Pressure or softening?
So in his report, it was a combination of both.
Equal?
I would say so.
Okay.
Now, if you look at it by percentage, if you look through the 80+ page report and you look at the percentage of the main breaks that occurred north of 70 with the water boosting, and then you looked at the water main breaks that occurred south of 70 due to the disconnection of the Needmore plant and the water softening, yes, the percentage of breaks was much higher north of 70. But mind you, that's because those numbers started out at 1 or 2. Where north of 70, where we have the older infrastructure, we were already seeing those, 15, 20, 30 a year, type things. So that's why you see the percentage. However, that percentage north of I-70 has backed down from that initial, 2019, 2020, era. However, south of 70, that has not backed down. If anything, it's gotten worse.
Right.
And I think we only got one contributing factor to that, and that's aging infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly. Okay, I got 2 things real quick. I had somebody reach out. They wanted to know about the water break that happened today on Rustic Woods. Why wasn't there any vouchers handed out to the people on Rustic Woods? Is that something the city is continuing to do?
So, Matt, that was a great question, because I also seen and was notified of that water break on Rustic Woods. And show you my phone right here. This is my my city email account. I don't know if you can see it. My last email was at 4:39 today about a boil advisory on Honeygate and Lodgeview. I have not received any city communication about a water main break on Rustic Woods. I've not received anything from city administration or the water department telling me about that. I mean, I don't have to, tell you guys. You obviously know of the lack of communication that we have within the city, and it's not very transparent. You find out about everything after it's written and done. So I've not been able to address those issues. 1, because I've had no communication from city administration, and 2, I literally just learned about that just a short time ago.
Okay. Are you going to reach out to the city as soon as possible?
Yes, there will be an email that will go out shortly after this podcast regarding that. I've seen some pictures of the flow and of the break. And like I said, I don't live too far from that area of Rustic Woods. I know my water hasn't been affected here. But at the same time, I did get some text messages shortly before this podcast, and I seen some items on social media that will be addressed this evening.
Awesome. And we got a question from Paul Schaefer on the YouTubes. Question for Mr. Shaw. Does the city's engineering staff have the education and experience to deal with the problems the city is seeing? Or do they need to hire experts and simply provide engineering oversight? What is the appropriate role of the city's engineers? Should they be doing direct engineering or administration? So that's a good question, Mr.
That's a fair question.
It's a good question, and I'm going to give you my honest opinion. Again, the city engineer does not report to city council. City engineer is a staff member underneath the interim city manager. And I'm going to answer it about as easy and as bluntly as I'll get out. I don't think our current engineer is capable of fixing this problem. And I don't believe our city administration is moving in the right direction to fix this. I don't believe a majority of council is moving in the right direction to fix this. Again, guys, we've been talking about this for years upon years.
Certainly.
So
I know when I ran back in 2015, here's the sign that melted. I have it in a protective case in case there's a water leak in here. It's
wow.
protected. But when I was running back in 2015, it was all infrastructure. Team Huber, it was all infrastructure. And that goes with all 4 members of Team Huber. Infrastructure. Now it's all about development. It's all about development. How many people can we pack into Huber Heights? And you know what? $20 million? $20 million of prior infrastructure that needs addressed? I don't understand.
You know what's interesting?
How does that come about?
If you go back and you look in that water study's got, man, pieces of gold all up in it. If you go back and look at that water study prior to Team Huber coming into office, the amount of water main replacements that took place, 10 years prior to that, and then look at the water main replacement per miles that took place after that. Yeah, there was an increase, but not enough. We have put more to our internal streets program. Good Lord, that was a budget fight to get that occurred, but we're still not doing enough. And the reason being is because certain individuals want to continue to grow and grow and grow instead of taking care of what we have here now. Right. And I just had a conversation. I was a panelist with our first tier suburbs, Dayton Area Board of Realtors, Land Corp, City of Clayton. And we were on a panel talking about housing. And, Vinebrook came up as being one of the largest retailers, which that's another topic I can get on later. But I literally sat there and told them, I said, we in Huber Heights don't need any more housing until we fix our infrastructure.
Indeed.
I will not be voting on any additional development of housing until our infrastructure is fixed. So if that means for the next 10 months, every housing development, apartment development that comes in front of me, it will receive a no vote.
Kevin Carter says, can you share the list of pipes that have supposedly been replaced that Mr. Chakowski provided last meeting? I guess you can get with him offline.
And Steve Zabindin was mentioned back in our communication part that every time he emails the city, he only gets the same response from like 2 or 3 people, which is a problem. And he mentioned the city can't grow with an overworked engineering staff. I guess the hard question that I'm wondering, and it was posed at the last meeting by Jeff Gore in that 45-minute diatribe about firefighter staffing. Does there need to be an executive session to discuss whether or not the city manager is effective? Is he able to do the job? Is he doing it well enough? If we have an engineer who isn't capable of handling the problem, we have staffing that are not able to handle it, either because there's not enough because he's not hiring enough people, or we're not hiring the right quality people. And if he's the boss, do we need to look? Are we looking in the wrong place for answers?
I will tell you that our city manager search is officially underway. I just received word, I think it was yesterday, day before. And I want to thank Kevin Carter for pushing that issue, because I actually learned a little bit on that as well. It appears that Baker Tilly, either from a lack of communication or just an absence, was not responding in a timely manner to our clerk of council, and getting us the documentation that we need, the timelines, the brochures, and getting everything updated. So, I'm hesitant to say that that a new city manager is coming soon. But at the same time, Frank, I got to be honest with you. Let's take a quick road down hypothetical lane. Let's say council went into executive session and we told the interim city manager his services were no longer needed. Now he goes back to assistant city manager. Who would we appoint to be the new interim city manager? The city engineer, the HR director,
Right.
Police chief, fire. We are out of options.
Right.
I mean,
talking about the fire chief anyway in that same breath, of whether or not there was a thing there. So yeah, it's kind of like shooting yourself in the foot. And I'm glad to hear that the city manager search is back on, at least starting, because I think that's going to be critical to get enough staffing there. Because if the reason why things can't happen that's continuously presented, and it may be 100% true that the staff are just so overworked, they're going in 1,000 directions. But if they're operating under the direction that of council is what we keep hearing, then the help will come from slowing things down and focusing on one or two things. And you're right, the development going on and on and on is going to just continuously put more projects out. They have to do all the vetting for, they got to do all the paperwork for, then all the permitting. And so they're not going to be focused on, well, is that water line that we're putting in going to stand up to the test of time, or is it going to cause a blowout 6 blocks away?
Well, now I do want to say this, and I think this is important. We talk a lot about city administration and the staff. I will say this for what it's worth. My interaction and conversations with the current interim city manager, they've not been perfect. They've not been the quickest lines of communication. But what I will say, from what I had to deal with in 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, this is leaps and bounds better.
That's good.
At least I'm able to pick up the phone, have a text message, whether we agree or disagree on the topic. That's been a positive.
The former city manager, not Scott, but the former. Wow, that guy was a joker. Anyway, carry on.
So I will say that, and not a lot to his own, because he had to really work with, a set of, staff members and individuals that were trained and protected by previous administration. So he has been working an uphill battle. Again, no excuse for, everything. But at the same time, I do enjoy working with him. Is the best situation for our city? Is he in the best position? Are we using him to the best of our abilities? Those are questions that are yet to become.
Okay, so we got a few questions here, Richard, from the audience. Your former Team Huberite. If the city can't afford to fix our infrastructure, how can we justify spending money on the NE, which is the project? And more importantly, how are we going to afford safety services for an additional 260 acres?
Well, that's a great question. And I will tell you, the votes are not there to approve the annexation. The votes are not there to approve the East Water Extension project. So
not even with a tie vote?
Oh, I'm going to tell you right now, a tie vote's just not going to happen.
Okay.
Why not? Simply being is I don't think that in those discussions with those votes coming down, you're going to see a full dais to vote on the matter. Here's the situation, and it's nothing to hide. I've made this abundantly clear to a couple of council members and the interim city manager. If I have to use political maneuvers in order to protect the overall good of this city, that's what's going to happen. It's not illegal, it's not unethical, and it's nothing against my oath of office. And we've seen it done by both sides on different topics throughout the years. And if that has to stop the annexation in the East Water Main by doing those items, so be it. Now, it would be in the best interest of my colleagues to sit down and have a rational discussion on how we move these items forward, where we're not taking money out of Mr. and Mrs. John Q. taxpayers' pocket to do it, where we're not threatening city services and safety services, which you'll see that campaign coming up for this. I mean, we have a city tax renewal that's going to be coming up, and then a school levy that's coming up.
It's only a renewal.
Yeah. Yeah, let's be honest, it is a renewal, but what you'll never hear from government entities is, well, if you don't pass this renewal, this is how much money you could keep for your family. This is how much your property taxes would decrease, and this is what the city could go back and do by looking at different ways to fund those entities. And I brought up several of those items. I mean, back in 2020, I had our previous law director, Jerry McDonald, looking at an option called impact fees and recreational fees. Same thing that the city of Columbus is doing. Did you know the city of Columbus is remodernizing Nationwide Arena with zero cost to their taxpayers?
How are they doing that?
So the General Assembly a couple of years ago passed a measure where charter cities, can put together what's called impact fees on development and developers, housing, commercial, residential. And every time that those developers come in and apply and get a building permit, there's an impact fee that's built onto that goes to the developer. And those funds go directly into a pot that the city can use for either infrastructure, rehabilitation, revitalization. And this is something I brought up to the city back in 2020. I had about 3 pages of legal work done on it. And fingers crossed, finally, we may be seeing that enacted here in Huber Heights after a conversation I had with the interim city manager on a couple of projects upcoming.
So they're going to make developers pay fees in Huber Heights?
That's right.
You're going to make – I don't know if those votes are going to come. Is it – cause that's something the council's going to have to vote on. And you got a couple folks on the dais that really love developers. They really do. Okay, we got a couple of questions here from the audience again. Let's see here. Let me go to this. Paul Schaefer asked another question. I believe the problem is we are running a mid-sized city with a small town government. I'll just say this, Paul. I lived in Huber Heights. I moved into it in 1977. I was just a wee little lad, right? Huber Heights has always been a small town. It hasn't been about the last 20 years that they wanted to pound development in the city of Huber Heights. And I'll tell you why, because they screwed up. Remember Bench Rock, the Pad to Nowhere, the Music Center. Oh, well, the Music Center makes money. The Aquatic Center does not make money. There's a lot of things that Huber Heights is still a small town, but they want it to be a mid-sized town. But you're right. If they do continue to grow it will be a mid-sized town. Anyway, I answered that for you, Richard. Sorry.
That's all right.
Kevin Carter, is the relationship between the fire chief and HR director a possible issue that needs to be revisited?
So here's what I will say, and I've spoken on this with the city engineer. Those two positions are underneath the city manager's direction. Personally, it is my belief. I've had a great deal of interaction with the fire chief. I've had not a whole lot of interaction with our HR director. But here's what I will say. I find both of them to be very professional. I find both of them that do their job extremely well. And until I'm notified of anything different, that's my stance.
Excellent. Karen Bachma, if fixing our water infrastructure in South Huber Heights is important to our city, then why does the voting record reflect pro-growth?
Karen, that's a great question, and here's
Fine question.
a fine question. So here's what I will say. I did vote on the movement across Executive Boulevard. I was the vote that made that happen, and simply being is I went on a compromise. I was promised items. I was guaranteed things would occur, and frankly, to date, those items have not fully panned out.
Can you talk about it?
Sure. So one of my big things, and I, again, this is going all the way back to the 2014, 2015 era, was public works. Many of you have heard me. I've actually voted no, which really kind of eats me up inside when our public works director comes and asks for new pieces of equipment. And I have to vote no because I know those pieces of equipment are sitting outside and deteriorating. I know that our hardworking staff in our public works department does not have the facilities they deserve and need to do the work they do. They don't have the maintenance shops that they need. I mean, again, with our growth and with the the leaf trucks, the jetter trucks, the plow trucks. I mean, you can go on and on and on. We don't have the storage for that. I have been pounding my fist for years on a new public works facility, and we get a whole diagram PowerPoint video about this grand. I think it's a $13 million public works facility, and then I don't know at whose direction. We need to size that down. That needs to be about $10 million. No. That needs to be what the public works director asked for. He is the professional. He is the staff member. I urge you, and again, I challenge anybody to find any negativity or negative reports that anybody in the city has had about our public works team. It doesn't exist. I mean, these guys are hardworking. Men and women over there. They do an amazing job, and they don't get the credit for it. So that was one of the items that I was promised, is that public works facility would get moved forward. The engineering, the construction would get moving forward. We got a piece of land over here right off of Taylorsville that I think is going to be perfect for it. But
Isn't
again,
that getting ready to close?
What's that?
Aren't they getting ready to close on the land over there?
Correct. Yes.
Mhm.
But we've not seen any engineering drawings. The only thing that I've seen is the original PowerPoint that was shown, I think, about 2 years ago. But just in my opinion, a lot of feet dragging still on that topic. Number two.
So they're probably going to, when you guys roll out, council's going to be full of the Gore and Campbell crew, who I like to deem Team Heights, right? So Team Heights they're going to control the entire council.
Well, not for say. You're still going to have Councilwoman Kitchen there. It's going to be interesting to see what Tom McMasters is going to be doing
if he gets elected.
If he gets elected, and it's going to be interesting to see what Dr. Fred Akins, as an at-large representative, will do up there. I think between the three of them, there's going to be a lot of conversation. The other side of council will not be able to pass their agenda through because they don't have the 6th vote. They can't get emergency legislation passed through. So there's still going to be barriers there. Mm-hmm. Now, is it going to be to where it is right now? No. But I think there's still going to be hope for the people, even after myself and Mr. Otto depart. Kind of to go back on that compromise a little bit, one of the other things that I was asking for, and I think, I think most of the community has been asking for it, is an expansion of our community center. That is one project that myself and the previous city manager worked to get moving. And there is so many updates that are needed there. That is a poor excuse for a community center. The parking lot needs expanded. The basketball court is horrendous. There's stuff inside that is just broken. and we are renting this thing out for pennies on the dollar just to get used for it. We're holding art shows there from our boards and commissions and a lot of other events. And I mean, it doesn't even have, free Wi-Fi there for people to use. Last time I was there and personally rented it, I sent, and it's a public email. I sent an entire email off with almost 20 different items that myself and others found that was, inadequate at that location. And there's a lot of room for potential there, and we are just underutilizing that building. So that was another area of compromise. Number 3 was the park at Dow and Longford. As I'm sure you all remember, myself and Mr. Otto got royally screwed on that deal a while back. The previous parks manager and previous assistant city manager worked really hard to come up with some viable options there, and working with a lot of nonprofits that was not going to hurt the wildlife, was going to increase recreational activities, and it got shot down. And a lot of that, I think, is due to some individuals on council that persuaded residents, provided them, in my opinion, with false information that killed that project.
I would like to know what false information was provided. Can you talk about that a little bit? And then I have a question from somebody here.
So yeah, the false information at the Don Longford property is we were going to go in there and cut down all these trees. That was 100% false. We wanted to utilize the trees. I mean, we wanted to utilize the riding trails that already exist there.
Right.
We wanted to beautify that.
We built those back in the day.
We also there was also a rumor out there that we were going to turn that into a concrete city. No. We were going to have adequate parking that was designed to use the least amount. Matter of fact, and I may be incorrect in stating this, there was actually a plan that we were going to use kind of like a gravel type situation, not concrete, not blacktop. I believe that was one of the plans that were in there. So we had all of this going on. The previous parks manager was looking at utilizing some of the trees that had fallen from the past tornado in the area, windstorm, and doing some sort of like, eco habitat. There was all these grand ideas, but that wasn't getting passed on to the residents. And myself and Mr. Otto, not only knocked those doors back in 2014 and 2015, garnering support for that park, which is why we in 2016 went and acquired that land from the city schools who didn't even know they owned it. The city was mowing it.
I remember that.
So we acquired that land for $1, and we've been mowing it ever since. Conversations with the residents was very productive throughout the years. There was a presentation to the Parks and Rec Committee. Things were going positive, and as soon as council got on board, that was it.
They squashed it.
Oh, they squashed it hardcore, yeah.
So I have a question from somebody. I'm going to put it up on the screen. This is something I was going to ask you about. And this is important. This is somebody that he was the chair of the Charter Review Commission that we sat on. This question's from Brian Detty. I'm here for parks, infrastructure, and WTF happened to Josh King. I just know from the time that I've spent in Huber Heights, Josh King is a stand-up dude, and he worked his tail off for the city of Huber Heights. And you have this little, okay, I'm not going to go that route. I'm not going to be like some other people, but I'm going to tell you, your interim place-holding city manager fires this guy. Why? It's total BS. Why?
It is. It is. It was, and it still is. City administration tried to put a legislation. It appeared in front of council to eliminate the parks management position, and
Yes,
that
they did.
that was the first red flag.
And council went up and squashed that idea. And then when they squashed the interim city manager's idea to do away with that position, he ended up firing him anyway. We want to know, why did he fire him? At least I do. I know there's a lot of folks out there that do.
So when that came in front of city council, and it was deemed that council was not going to take the fall for a city employee issue, that was put back on the city manager. And mind you, that message was not received lightly. Because after that meeting, I personally went into the office of the interim city manager and advised him that at least myself and many of my colleagues were not going to be the tow boys for personnel issues and hiring and firing. We worked extremely hard to get to that parks management position. We have worked really hard to boost our parks and recreation and our infrastructure. And I was going to be damned if it was going to be on my watch that we go backwards. So the conversation then took place that, and I asked very clearly. I said, and I think other members of city council asked this as well, because personnel files are public record, and that means anybody, you guys, anybody can put a PRR in for a personnel file for any city employee. And I find it interesting that leading up to that date and time, there was no documentation of issues by that employee.
Okay, so the parks manager, who we know is Josh King, right? No documentation saying he's doing a horrible job. Were there any reviews done? Were there any assessments of his position? Because all I saw was parks getting better and better and better. And the people of Huber Heights love their parks. They love them. And he brought it up a notch, way above what that other company down the road can do. And then you give them $100 and some grand a year. I know Josh wasn't making $100 and some grand.
Oh, you don't want to get me started on the YMCA and their inadequate handling of our parks and recreation system from day one. I mean, I went toe to toe with Dale Bruner in the YMCA because I think they've been.
I'm a member, but
well, again, I'm also a member as well. My son goes there for a lot of conditioning. But being the YMCA and being the Parks and Rec director, those are two different things.
Exactly.
In my opinion, should not be married.
Right.
But that's another conversation we can get into later. As far as the parks management position, I will tell you to date, I received no reviewed documentation from the city manager as to the issue or issues. I was never made aware of any documentation that was in his personnel file. I was never made aware of any life-threatening events that had to be called by our PD or fire department due to Josh's performance. And yeah, I also am a huge fan of Josh King. Again, I see him at football games. I see him out in the community when he was employed with the city.
He's a resident.
Yeah.
He's everywhere.
Is the interim city manager a resident of Huber Heights?
It is not, no.
Oh, okay. All right.
So flat out, Matt, to tell you that that decision was not a council decision. That decision was a decision of the interim city manager.
So going back to staffing a little bit, because that's one part. I mean, we're talking about the city staff being stretched thin. So they get rid of a parks manager and they file it down the road to an already overworked YMCA anyway, who didn't have necessarily the best outcomes the first part. But Public Works is stretched thin. They haven't hired new Public Works folks in a while. Paul Schaefer mentioned that they haven't hired a new police officer, like a brand new position anyway. They've replaced, not since 1989, he's saying. And talking about the firefighters, trying to get to that 42, there was that 45-minute discussion, but on the Huber Heights Fire Division Facebook page 7 hours ago, says we're hiring firefighter, paramedic, lateral, and entry, and then has the caveat, just over 24 hours left to apply. Have we gotten to 42, or are we at 41, ready for 42? Is there a reason why maybe that we now have a 24-hour window to close that position when we haven't hit enough hiring on that? Who's making that call?
To my knowledge, we have not hit the 42 agreed upon number. And
I don't know if you can see that. Well, no, you can't see that. But it's right above that post, Matt. There's a new one up there that says it has the big "we are hiring" thing. Says just over 24 hours to apply. So they're closing the position tomorrow.
Oh, this is the 3-day.
Yeah, that's
post
the one. There's
where
another one on there, Matt.
And congratulations to the new firefighter.
Yes, welcome, Nick.
I hate to put him in the crossfire, but yeah,
much needed positions.
So two things on that. To my knowledge, we have not hit the 42 number that was agreed upon on our fire department, which is unfortunate. I do believe there are other avenues that the city can take. I do have faith in our fire chief that things are going to get better within our fire division as far as staffing. Do I believe we need more than 42? Yeah, I do believe we need more than 42. I mean, let's be honest. The rate we are going, this hasn't been discussed yet, either in back room or public. However, it was discussed early on when I came on council that an additional fire station, not the one that was recently built up near Carriage Trails, but a fourth fire station will be needed very soon. Mark my words, mark the calendar. That will be the next pitch, which will come with additional apparatus, because there is just no way. If you look at the mutual aid support, if you look at the fire apparatus that we're currently running, that's aging out, with our fire department locations that are aging out, that fourth fire station and additional apparatus ask is coming soon. Mark my words. As far as the police department, I was under the impression from what Mayor Gore had put out that we were going to have a new traffic control unit. You all remember a big town hall that he did? And
I was there for that one.
I want to say that was near election time. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong.
Didn't he also say that Huber's flush with cash and that they could do a whole bunch of stuff? And now you're worried about, well, we can't really fix pipes.
Yeah.
Can't really fix the infrastructure, but Huber's flush with cash. Elect me.
So I was, the mayor of this community said that there was going to be a new traffic control unit. He said that there was going to be new police officers coming. I want to say it was about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that.
That's about right.
So back to Mr. Schaefer's question, I support additional police officers. For those who don't know, I'm a former police explorer, and I support our law enforcement all day long. If anybody here remembers, I was asking for body cameras years upon years ago, to protect our men and women in uniform. And unfortunately, it took about 3 years later, in a very national tragic incident, for that to occur here in Huber Heights. But again, that just goes back on to the things that have been typically brought up by Mr. Shaw and Mr. Otto, get tossed in the wind.
Right. Because that discussion at that town hall meeting did say, and there were citizens that were actually there. It was a good turnout to that one. because there were concerns all over the city, and they do remain: traffic at Merrily Way, traffic speeding through town, and trying to find out, people that were having near miss accidents. They were worried about kids going to school and the bus stops. And the discussion was, hey, the next budget discussion that comes up, we'll be more than willing as a council to discuss funding a traffic division. And the police chief was there, nodded his head, and was in agreement of all that. And then when we get to the budget decision timing, that same chief walks up in front of the same mayor and says, we have enough officers, we're fine. So no traffic division. The traffic issues haven't really changed. And the only solution is to pay overtime for already overworked officers to sit in an Arby's parking lot and sit in an intersection so people actually drive right. And that, now that they're done with that study, it's going back to the same way it was. I'm through there all the time. I have 2 kids that work in that area. I'm there just about 5 or 6 days a week, multiple times a day.
Well, Frank,
and I can tell you that it's bad.
Frank, if you go back and watch the last work session, I actually brought that up.
You did.
And a certain councilwoman says, there's no issue there whatsoever. It's perfect.
Yep. That was an
and I'm going to tell you right now, if anybody watching this or yourselves believe that the traffic at Merrily Way, Troy, and 70 is going to get better in the next year, you are the chief executive of Fantasyland. It is going to get worse until the city puts real design work and real infrastructure money into making that intersection and those intersections better, working hand in hand with our ODOT deputy director to have good conversation on safety funding that can be available, making a state budget request to enhance and expand that decking. Until those things happen, it's going to get worse.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just, give me 1 second. I was going to pull up Nancy Burge's email. So if anybody has an issue with that traffic up there, email Nancy Burge. I'll find that email. Frank, I know you got some questions.
Well, when we're talking about a lot of the funding stuff, and specifically around infrastructure, if you look at the budgets going back as far as you want to go, there's always line items in there for water line maintenance and repair. And there's been $1 million here, $2 million there, depends on what year it is. And with all the issues we're having and not having those linear feet of pipe in the ground, and now talking about that philosophy of let's shake the couch cushion and see what falls out, which is utter ridiculousness. The money's there or it's not. What happened to that money before? Where did all of the money go? And I, like Steve said, who upset ODOT that they don't want to work with us? That's a whole other talk show probably. But what happened to all the millions of dollars years ago that was in the budget already to maintain these pipes, to replace pipes as needed? That now we need $20 million because it wasn't spent before, and $4 million a year possibly to stay ahead of this.
Frank, you're saying there was money in the water fund and it's no longer there.
I don't know where it is. Because if it wasn't spent, and what we've been told is there hasn't been new pipe put in the ground to replace the old. Okay. And we had a fund in the budget for that had money in it. And every year, if we don't spend it and we add more to it, there should be $20 million sitting there right now, but there isn't. So that money had to have gone somewhere and been reallocated.
Where's it at, Richard?
I'm just going to be very blunt. Drive north of 70 up in Carriage Trails, and as you drive down the road, there's the money. We all know that those deck deals, the Carriage Trails deals, came with assessments that took money out of the water fund and sewer fund to pay for the infrastructure cost on a shoulda, woulda, coulda, hope assessment that's going to come back and probably by the time I'm maybe in a nursing home. So that's where all that money went to. And that's why I said if you go in that water report, again, gold mines everywhere, go back and look at how much water infrastructure miles were done. Go back 2003 to 2014.
Mm-hmm.
What happened during that time? And then look what happened after 2014 as those miles of infrastructure increased.
Mm-hmm.
So it's there in black and white. This study it's not the best, but I think it definitely paints a roadmap of things that we've all been talking about for years.
Yep.
Right.
And why this city, oh my goodness, you're getting me on another rant. Why this city continues to need darn studies for stuff that we already know blows my mind.
Study
They're
the
going to
study.
argue about it 6 months later, so nothing happens. So is the
Well,
gas tax
I
fund now
have
the new
this.
slush fund?
What's that? Go
Is
ahead.
the gas tax fund now the new water replacement slush fund, since there isn't money in there now to pull? When $649,000 got moved over on a loan that didn't go through, and now it just has to stay, because instead of pulling it back and saying the SIB loan failed for a project, I believe, that was tagged for carriage trails up there, and that just now gets to stay there. So now we have to pass legislation to balance the books so it looks better when we get audited. But is that the new slush fund now, the gas tax fund?
I don't know if it's the new slush fund, but as you guys definitely know, certain members of council likes revenue funds that we can move around and move the funds here and there. Is interesting if you go back to the last work session, and I had a great deal of conversation about what we could use money for. And I made a comment that our mayor said previously, and I think Matt alluded to it within the police conversation. We've got all this money in the general fund. We can spend it. But then at the same time, you hear spurts of conversations from the finance director and the interim city manager of we're at bond capacity.
Yeah.
I mean, we are darn. I mean, I'm going to use the B word. We're darn near broke.
Yes.
We have enough income to pay our credit card bills, but that's it.
Here's just my guesstimate, and I'm nobody. I don't know anything about this stuff, but I'll tell you this: you had bench rock. What do they do to get out of bench rock? Get out from underneath it. They built the music center, so they think, and they're like, okay, if we screw something up, we'll just build something else. That'll bring in more money. It's almost like getting a credit card and just maxing it out, getting another credit card to pay over that maxed out credit card and just rolling it over. I don't know. And they're going to say, oh, Matt, you're stupid. Wiley, you're stupid. We got this. These guys are idiots. They don't know what they're talking about. They never know what they're talking about. They're just angry people or whatever.
Just stirring up and complaining, yeah.
And it is my full opinion, and I have no proof of this, but a few years back, we received a FEMA grant opportunity to hire firefighters. However, with that FEMA grant came an opportunity or a clause in there that we had to sustain those firefighters and with a plan for several years after that. The finance director went on record as saying, we can't do that. Mm-hmm. I met him outside of City Hall, and he says, we don't have the funds at this time to sustain that.
Right.
And Paul Schaefer, he brings this up. Exactly, Paul. They're all ran by Democrats. Carry on.
So, I mean, honestly, it's going to take a situation. It's going to take our finance director, who I think is very intelligent. And I think it's going to literally take him to come out on the dais to tell this council, we don't have the money for your pet projects anymore. We don't have the bond capacity to make this happen anymore. We don't have the debt ceiling to continue these projects. That's what has to happen. And I urge our finance director to do that.
It might be career suicide, but I think it needs to happen. Just out of curiosity, what is Huber Heights debt ceiling? Because it seems to be 35 miles in the air. Where is the brakes on the bus?
That's a number that just keeps climbing, because if you hear the wizards within the city is we find a revenue stream Okay, so we're bringing in X amount of dollars in this new revenue stream. How much money can we bond, using that revenue stream?
Mhm.
None. Leave it alone. Let it be
And
revenue.
a bond is a loan
Yeah.
with
Yes.
interest. So there's no zero interest bonds. I mean, there may be a few out there, but there's not a lot. Huber doesn't have a lot of those.
No.
So here's a quick question. I heard on the last work session that Clark County was not being a very good partner, but Huber wasn't a good partner to Bethel annexing that land. Why would anyone work with Huber on Huber's terms if Clark County viewed what just happened over in Bethel?
Matt, here's the situation. For years upon years, Huber Heights has not played well within the region. That's nothing new.
No, that came out a while back.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I think our interim city manager said that on the dais. We don't play well. We have not played well with others. And to expect Bethel, Clark County, Bethel Clark, or anybody to play well with us, well, I mean, how can you ask that? How you just can't. But the thing that really irritated me with that whole conversation is we've had that JED in place. I think
Tell some of the folks what a JED is if they don't know.
JED is a joint economic development plan, and it's got a couple of different moving parts to it. Some are different than others. To be honest with you, Matt, I have not read the full agreement that Huber has with Clark County. I've requested that. I'm waiting to get that to read more about it.
Okay.
But essentially, a few of them within the state has infrastructure sharing, economic development sharing in certain areas where one community can run a water line, the other community can run a sewer line. Maybe there's shared roads. There's a lot of those different aspects to that. But when I was told flat out that Clark County is just not playing ball and is not upholding their end of the agreement, but yet you got members on the dais that said, well, you passed a legislation to work with Fairborn for water. No, we passed legislation to say if we needed to go with Fairborn for water, if we needed to tap in their resources, that agreement was there. But we got an agreement over here with Clark County that's been on the books for 20 plus years, and they're not upholding any of their spots on that. Why have we not litigated that? And that blows my mind. It truly does. So that's an issue. But the fact of the matter is, and I don't think it's going to happen anytime within the next year, but there needs to be a regional approach to bring Huber Heights into the fold. When you have communities like Huber Heights, Vandalia, and Trotwood that have completely gotten shut out by Montgomery County and the administrators and county commissioners, there has to be representation there. There has to be a gap that is filled there. And until we have that representation at the county level, we're not going to see the quality CDBG funding. We're not going to see the quality EDGE grant applications. We're not going to see the quality infrastructure assistance from the county or from ODOT because we are not regional players. Name the last time that anybody from Jobs Ohio, from JP Nassef, or Dayton Development Coalition attempted to come in to help out with any commercial activity or business growth in here. I can tell you the last time, QQE. And we fumbled that football.
That was years ago.
We fumbled that football that could have brought in several good paying jobs and had a new basis of business here. And man, we tanked that before they could even lay the first brick. But there has to be that representation.
Who authorized the city manager to make promises to the EPA?
Who authorized the city manager to make promises to the EPA?
Right.
Again, I would have to see those written communications through EPA. I know when there's addendums and orders that come down through the EPA, our water department, our city engineer, and our city administrator has authorization to make certain
Sure.
suggestions and amendments to those. But as far as this particular issue within Clark County, there's a lot more questions that's being asked because, trust me, I'm not the only frustrated person that's having this discussion right now.
Frank, do you have any questions before I play some of these videos?
What should, in your opinion here, what should be, if we're going to look at development in Huber Heights, if we're going to look at improving things around and trying to attract new businesses, what actually needs to happen? Because it seems like the directions that are being done are Band-Aids, temporary, and focusing possibly in the wrong way. And I know that the dialogue that gets kicked back is the city has no control over who wants to come in. If we have more cars or more money, then maybe we can attract different folks. But there are towns that are smaller than us or in different economic conditions in Huber Heights that have attracted things such as the sports complex that was supposed to go in on Enterprise Drive up there ended up being built in Middletown. It's now the largest indoor sports complex in the country. Middletown got it. Huber Heights was the first in line for that, and that fell through. So what do you think needs to happen, and what maybe can you do in the last 10 months of your term to kind of help steer the city in a better direction, so we're not just seeing growth for growth's sake and development just to put something on a plot of land that's actually going to be beneficial for this town and for the voters, the residents, and the taxpayers who, quite honestly, are expecting more but getting less?
Frank, that's a loaded question.
Yes,
That has several different tentacles to it. I'm going to try to make my answer as quickly as possible. There are several avenues. One, I talked about the representation at the county and the state level. I feel that now we have a state representative that is willing to do some work on our behalf and to make those state budget requests to say that Huber Heights is a player in the game. I worked with First Tier Suburbs a couple years back with JP Nassef and a few others from Dayton Development Coalition and Jobs Ohio to hold a job retention forum. We have to start getting out there and letting people know that Huber Heights is willing to play ball, and not just bring everything here. I've said this once, and I've said it for the past 7 years when I talked regionally and state, is just because Huber Heights doesn't get the jobs, just because Huber Heights doesn't get the housing, doesn't mean Huber Heights is not going to win. Especially when we have the shopping, we have restaurants that are coming in. We have the Rose Music Center, we have the Aquatic Center. We have things that will attract park space, things of that nature. And I think that regionally, that's where we need to put that. Additionally, we have got to revamp our code enforcement and zoning. Let's just be honest. Our current code enforcement right now is understaffed, and it's a hot mess. It needs to be totally thrown out and revamped. Our ordinances don't make sense. When you can drive down main thoroughfares in our city and see illegal sign placements on Saturdays, when you can see people putting junk lawnmowers and stuff on the side of their houses, and it's been doing that for years, when you see homes that are dilapidated and are not getting fixed, we are not taking a proactive approach. We have done everything in this city on a reactive basis. So there is just, and honestly, Frank, I'm not going to be able to fix that in 10 months. These are things that have been tried to be fixed over the past 7 years.
Who can help the most to fix this stuff? The people.
That's it.
The people have to wake up, get involved, get up to city council, start voicing your opinion. Facebook is not doing it. You're not going to get your opinion heard on Facebook. You have to be at City Hall. You have to let these yahoos know. No offense, Richard. You're a politician. But you got to go up there. You got to talk to these people. You got to tell. And don't let them BS you, because they'll talk your ear off until they get you to hear what they want you to hear. Tell them to zip it. You work for me.
So
I want you to do. I'm
going to give everybody a little that's listening a little tidbit of information. if you want to really open open the ears and eyes of city council, you need to go and speak during the council meetings. And here's how you do that. You go and fill out the form that you want to register for citizen comments. Then additionally, there is an option that you can register to speak on agenda items. Nothing on that form says you can only speak on one agenda item. If you want to hand that form in, and where it says speak on agenda items, if you want to write all, the clerk of council and the chair, which is the mayor, under our current rules of council, is required to call on you on every agenda item, and you get to make comments. What a great way, not only to, and I hate to say prolong the meeting, but to really force council to sit there and listen to you. That is the best way to do it. Blow up their email inbox, send emails. And I will tell you that there is one particular resident in this community that I think needs to hold a class on that, and that's Paul Schaefer. He sends quality emails. Now, do I personally respond to every email? No. But Paul Schaefer and I have had conversations. He knows I read those emails, and I do respond to a few of them because not all of those emails are directed towards me. However, more for the entire group, or a majority of those that are not quite understanding what the residents want. And Paul Schaefer will sit here and not send one or two emails. I bet you on a week's time, I probably get 5+ emails from Paul Schaefer.
Good job.
And I enjoy them. And that's exactly what every resident needs to do. And when you send those emails, send them and tag news agency on them. Tag whoever. I mean, make it as public as possible. Because remember, every one of those emails are public record. And if you put Tony Rogers on there and you speak on those agenda items, that all becomes a part of the public record and the official minutes within that meeting. What a great way for people to get their voice heard.
Excellent. I've kept you long enough, Richard. I think I've kept you for about an hour and a half. We will definitely have to do this again.
This is great. I thought we were going to go for another hour.
Yeah, if you want to. Heck, all right. Let's see here. I got some videos.
Oh my goodness! Here we go.
All right. Yeah. Are you good, Frank?
I'm good.
All right. Let me pop up a couple of these puppies. All right. So I'm going to play this one, and I want to get your thoughts, both of you guys.
The direction that staff takes. Here's what I know for fact. We need a lot of infrastructure work, water main work, road work. We need a lot of general work within the city to service our people. I know these things to be fact. What I don't know are a lot of these other things, because I'm getting a lot of ifs, maybes, and coulds, possibles, don't know, not sure. So this is all postulation for the most part. So from that standpoint, Brian, I got to say that again, I got to stand behind what I know to be fact, and that is that our current city and our current population of 43,000 need a lot of attention, and we are diverting that attention towards other outside newer projects. And I'm just right now I can't support that until I see some significant work underway within the city on these other things. So I'll end it there, Mayor. Thank you.
How long have we been talking about water?
In my tenure, sir, relatively recently.
So I'm going to pause this just for a minute. He went down the line and he was talking about infrastructure. He was talking about how it means a lot to the people that you actually have infrastructure in the city. The mayor's first question is, how long have we been talking about water? Well, since the conception of the city, have you been or should have been talking about water? That's just, anyway. Anybody got any thoughts on that initial part? I'm going to play it through because I want y'all to hear your mayor.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
That it's bubbled to the top of it. Was one of the first meetings that, in my capacity, it was one of the very first things that we talked about when I assumed the role manager. And I think that that was one of the very first things that we committed to do, was to provide for the utility infrastructure, the infrastructure presentation that you saw tonight. And that would have been in November
Of 21.
of 21. That is correct.
I mean, like, and I understand everybody's issues. I think some of the discussion about diverting attention.
Does anybody, he understands everybody's issues. I want to make that clear. He understands everybody's issues about water.
And things like that, I would just say I think is not genuine.
There it was.
We have, and from your perspective, Glenn, you were absent during the meeting where council agreed
And this is where they demean you.
to, in fact, so on September the 6th, September the 12th of 2022 is when this council voted 7-0 with Glenn being absent to approve the city manager entering into a contract with Fairborn to tie into their wastewater plant. And we've been talking about, it's not like any of you didn't know, we didn't have water issues in September of last year. It's just not even, that's 6 months ago. So now to all of a sudden say, we know so much more about water that we're going to go back and negate the contract you all approved for him to enter into with Fairborn and their wastewater plant. That's what that is.
Okay, I can't listen to any more of that. What do you guys think?
It's been said before of the scare tactics. The Huber two-step, I think, has been made mention by one council member. I mean, this is a perfect example. I mean, we've been talking about water and the infrastructure needs of this community for years upon years. It's just the deaf ears that were present at City Hall neglected to take action, in my opinion. And now when the alarms are going off and, certain, residents are stepping up and, our own water department is saying, whoa, guys, hey, man, we got a lot of water breaks going on. Now people are starting to kind of listen, but they're not hearing. And that's unfortunate. And to sit there and, demean the facts, bringing up the shoulda, woulda, couldas. Oh my goodness, I'm tired about the shoulda, woulda, couldas. We should have had the Heights, 1-point plan. We should have had the Heights 2.0. We should have had good sports. We shouldn't have had to pay TJ Chumps money because we falsely told them, a development agreement deal. We should have had all kinds of shoulda, woulda, couldas. Somebody help me out. How long has the music center been open? About what?
2018, was it? I don't know.
Almost
No,
5
it was
years, I
way
think.
before that. It was like 2015, 2016.
It was. Let's say conversation's sake around 2013, right?
Yeah.
At least that's when the music center was being open, discussed, and all that stuff. Can anybody tell me any new economic development that's occurred on Executive Boulevard in the past 10 years?
We have a True North Hotel up there now.
Yeah, that's been up there for a while.
Yeah.
But
where's those billions at?
The billions with a B.
Yeah. You're talking about shoulda, woulda, coulda plans. That's one of the biggest ones.
So for folks who are new to Huber Heights, years ago, I remember the billions with a B talk. And what was it, like 2011, 2012?
You got it. It's been
billions with a B. So
years.
What are we like? Yeah, 10 years and it still hadn't happened. You have to understand that you're being promised a lot of stuff and they're trying to make folks look bad. And look, Richard, my issue with you is you are a lame duck politician. You need to be the bulldog in the ring. Go after him. At least that's my opinion. I don't live in Huber. Do what you want. But for the sake of the folks of Huber who I know and love, got to be the bulldog. Team Huber needs to come back out like the fiery phoenix and just do something. I don't know.
Well, I can't speak on how other council members are going to vote, but here's what I will tell you. From what I know, the numbers are not going to be there for any new residential development for the rest of this year. That's what I do know. Here's what I also know: the shoulda, woulda, coulda conversations, the compromising, the false promises. That ship has sailed a long time ago, and we are done with that. We are absolutely done with the shoulda, woulda, couldas. I am still going to be working hard for the residents of this community for the next 10 months and then some. I'm still working with our regional partners, First Tier Suburbs, Dayton Development Coalition. I'm still going to be, a part of this community. And yeah, the scare tactics over the next 10 months, they're not going to work. I urge my colleagues, please save your breath and don't try them. Don't come to myself and any other members of council and the residents and talk about, the city's going down the drain if you don't do this. We're going to lose tax money if you don't do that. We're not going to get this development if you don't do X. Listen, in my opinion, we could be a jobs factor in this region. Now, are we going to pull in an Intel, an Amazon, a Chewy? No. But what we could do is we have a lot of government and medical and manufacturing jobs that could easily find their way into Huber Heights, and not only because of location, but because of opportunities within that location. And I think that's where that representation needs to come back, not only regionally, but within the state, in order to work for the residents of this community, because this community has got some serious problems ahead of it.
Yes.
Not just about infrastructure, not just about roads.
We all do. I think we all do. There's going to be a lot of things coming. I mean, what do we got? World War III, trains blowing up all over the place. We're going to have a lot of problems that we have to face. And I don't know if a lot of your council members that sit on that dais who are trying to be short-sighted on their development plans because we got to get to 50,000 people or whatever their belief is. But there's going to be a lot of things that come up. There was one thing, your interim city manager talked about inflation. Yeah, it's going to keep going. We're living in strange times. I mean, as a national country, we're sanctioning everybody. Anybody that makes Biden mad, we're sanctioning them. I don't know. I could go on. If you want to listen to that part, you can tune into the other Truman's Town Hall. So, I was going to play some other videos. I'm not going to play them. There was one where Nancy was rude, saying people got to act smarter, right? You guys, if you want to look at it, go check out the hhoh.org and watch the last work session. There was one Frank brought up about the quid pro quo. How about we do this? Where your mayor said, we bring it up to 45 firefighters. And how would that be? Would you then get the city back on track and start voting essentially the way I want you to vote? I mean, if you heard that, it's in there. It's actually a minute, 2 hours, 31 minutes, and 35 seconds if you want to hear the quid pro quo. And anyway, Frank, what else you got?
That's about what I had for this evening at this point.
I'm gonna lose my mind here.
And
to all the millions of listeners, thanks for watching tonight.
This has been a great interaction, guys. I certainly appreciate it. Hopefully I've given everybody, at least in my opinion, as truthful and honest answers as I have. Maybe not what everybody was hoping for, and maybe people got more than what they bargained for. I don't know.
Is there anything you want to talk about, Richard, that you haven't talked about tonight that needs to be out there?
Well, I made a commitment to this community back in 2014 that I was going to run 2 terms, and that was going to be it, unless I, seeked a higher office. And I tried that, and like I said, I had promises from individuals that weren't kept, and I did things tactically that were err on my side that lost me that election, and damn, that hurt. There is no joke about that, but I'm not sour about it. It is what it is. You win some, you lose some, you move on. But yes, I did. I did make that commitment, and I am stepping down at the end of this year. And I'm doing it on my own terms. Could I have put my name back on the ballot? I sure as hell could have. I could have went out and got my 50 signatures, paid the $35 down at the BOE, and I'd been back on the ballot. No ifs, ands, or buts. This was a family conversation that took place, and my son's a freshman right now, playing football and baseball, and my daughter's going to be moving out here in a few months, and a lot of things I've turned around for my family, and fortunate things. So we've been able to do a lot of extra items, and it's going to be a good opportunity to kind of travel with the wife a little bit and spend some time with the family. But I'm not going anywhere, and I don't mind making this known here. I do have a small group that I put together, and I am exploring my options for a county commission run. I don't know if it's going to happen in the next cycle or not, because I think a lot of things need to be in line for that to happen. That's a big push. But I'm not going anywhere. Once these next 10 months are done, I'm still going to be involved in the city. I'm still going to be around. I'm not going to move. I'm not going to close my door. It's not going to be something you're never going to see me again. But for those who don't know, and don't let the gray fool you, I'm only 37 years old. So I still got some miles left. So I'm not down and out for the count. But it's been great working with this city, and it's also been frustrating. I will say that almost every original campaign promise that I made when I got elected has been successfully done. We've done a lot of great things for this community, and we're going to continue to do that. We are not going to let certain individuals and certain developers, downgrade the quality of life that many residents in this community has come to expect. And it's very unfortunate to see the forced growth while neglecting our infrastructure. That's been key one. We still have opioid problems in our community, in our region, that needs addressed. We still have business issues. We have open business shops and strip malls that need taken care of. We have all kinds of crime issues that are starting to rear their ugly heads in our community. We are going to get those big city problems. For those who are used to those small bedroom community items, because of the forced growth ideas of many, you're going to see an overtaxed police department. You're going to see an overtaxed fire department. You're already seeing an overtaxed public works department. And I really urge those who have filed their petitions and will be on the upcoming ballot to recognize that as you are moving forward in your hopes to serve on city council or a board and commission. These are important times for our community, and I think they're. I know it's been the national play, the sky is falling, Chicken Little type situation, but guys, we're at an imperil right now. And things have to start getting addressed now, because we are at an impasse.
Richard, real quick before we jump off.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you say you're looking into running for the Montgomery County Commissioner seat. Is that what you said?
Yes.
You have to come back on here. Talk about that. That would be great. Kevin Carter just wanted to end with a little something. Can Mr. Shaw elaborate on the SE expansion from the Centerpoint 70 development was Old Dominion uses a carrot, whereas expansion to the SE is really the need to extend water and sewer east. You have anything to say on that real quick?
So here's the thing. Old Dominion was the first power play in that area. And it was even discussed at last week's work session. Even if we litigate, even if we do nothing, Old Dominion is still going to have infrastructure. I mean, the interim city manager said it himself. If we litigate and put a stay on that, Old Dominion's still going to have what they need, because that was one of the scare tactics that I think city administration and the mayor tried to use, that we're going to lose all that income tax based money from Old Dominion if we don't pass this extension project. And that's completely false and ridiculous.
Right, they admitted it.
Yeah.
Later on in the video. Are you still going to get the tax money? Yes.
And that's because I was pushing the city manager, because he was on his shoulda, woulda, couldas on his blue and orange dot map, and I had to ask him pointed questions. Do we have any inked deals? No. Do we have any potential or inked items here? No. Okay. So let's stop worrying about the shoulda, woulda, couldas up there, and let's worry about what we have going on here. And if the city manager wants to call me up, if the mayor wants to call me up and say, hey, we do have a power play, an Intel or something like that, that has a land contract up here, and we're looking to do here, and they're promising X amount of jobs, I would have a bit of more of an open mind on that. But I'd also have to go back and refresh my memory on when Huber Heights was promised to be the world headquarters of Stratacash at the old Kroger facility, and Stratacash got a boatload of community economic dollars, left that building trash, and said, oh, we're going to build our headquarters over in Dayton and Trotwood. Because Huber Heights put the agreement together to get those jobs at that time and had no clawbacks in that provision. So our community lost a boatload of dollars, an opportunity to get gainful jobs, and we left that old Kroger's facility empty for, oh my goodness, it was several years.
All right. Frank, anything else?
No, that's pretty much it. Other than, is there anything you want to share with the citizens that you believe is your legacy projects, or something that you are the most proud of being the representative to kind of get through?
So, I will say there are several. I can't take full credit for those. Things such as parks, things such as enhancing our business.
I'll take the
relations.
Credit. It was all me. Thanks, guys. You're welcome.
There is one thing I will take credit for, and I don't talk about this enough. I don't know how many people know that we had a human trafficking ring within Huber Heights. We had some illegal massage parlors that was starting to spread their roots and tentacles into our community. I was able to work with our state partners and our regional partners, and worked with our legal counsel to come up with written legislation that made our legal massage parlors, our state certified massage parlors, better equipped to operate business. We were able to shut down. We had several arrests and a few other regional and state efforts that shut down those illegal massage parlors. I think there was a total of 3 of them within the community. And we were able to close out that human trafficking ring here within Miller Lane and Huber Heights. That was one thing that I was super proud of having a hand in, and working in this community to make it a bit safer. That's something that I mean, in my opinion, that's what local politics is about. That's
huge, man.
Yeah, that didn't cost. I didn't have a $2 million statue built on my behalf or something of that nature. It was something legislatively that was done to protect the businesses, the residents, and those that were being done wrong.
How do you hear about something like that?
So that initially started because I had good relationships with some of the business owners that was in these complexes. Our police department was notified, and understand they, even with some, undercover activity and things of that nature at the time, they could only do so much.
Right.
And that's really where legislation had to be upheld. That same legislation, I will tell you, went to Euclid, Dublin, Cuyahoga Falls, and Youngstown, just to name a few, that myself and the law director came up with to shut down those massage parlors.
I remember you talking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now
that's great.
It's all good now, huh?
Yeah. To my knowledge, those massage parlors are closed up within the region. And now we just have to deal with the ridiculous convenience stores selling shots. So I've got one down. I've got one more to go.
Excuse me. Are they still selling shots?
We have one facility within the city limits that is still selling shots over on Brant Pike.
Frank, the next live is where they do shots, and we'll do like a drinking game. Anytime, I don't know. We'll think of something. So the next live, folks, the next live, we're going to be doing shots at that gas station. I think I know which one it is. Frank's going to do 151. I'm doing tequila. I may or may not be wearing a shirt. I don't know. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching tonight. I appreciate everybody tuning in. We do a Sunday broadcast. We start out with state, national politics, and then our buddy, the Red Rooster, we get into some discussion about God and life and things like that. So that's Sunday at 9:45. Richard, thank you for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. I don't know if there is any more questions, but they'll pop up on the YouTube page. And if there are, just look back. And if you want to answer them, email Richard. His city email's up there. So is Nancy's.
And again, if you send me an email, it's gonna pop through. I'm gonna see it. And unless you're Paul Schaefer, and I just get you at a meeting because your quality emails are coming through, I will respond. And it can be on the lightest of issues. When I was coming back home on my way back from my family cruise, I was helping a resident with their streetlights. So just because I'm not in the city, even when I'm on vacation, I'm still working for the residents of this community.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Y'all have a good night.